In this video, I'll show you an automated system to help you multiply your content over and over using Airtable and Make.com. I'll uncover the essential concepts for creating, producing, and distributing content efficiently. Then I'll walk through how I think about things, and then I'll build everything live from scratch step by step so that you can see how to build this into your business today. Now, before we get into the build, I want to talk about two important concepts, and that is really the old way that people think about content and the new way that they should be thinking about content. Now, it's understandable because we publish to platforms like YouTube and TikTok and Instagram and LinkedIn and to Twitter to think of our content as a YouTube video or a vertical video that we publish to one of these platforms or a tweet that we publish to Twitter. So the new way of thinking is to really think of all of these individual pieces of content that you're creating as individual pieces of content. You've got a YouTube video and you do have a thumbnail and you do have copy and a title, but theoretically any of these individual pieces of content could be reused in a number of ways. And the same goes for these as well. And it's a subtle shift, but if we think about that video and the copy and the image and the title and the transcript, all of these different things as individual pieces of content that all get stored individually inside of a content pool that has some sort of automation that allows you to easily organize it and then transform one thing into the next. Here we could easily take a video and create a transcript, which could then create the title of our post, and then it could create some copy. And that copy could be converted into other copy for other posts. And then from that pool, we can take all of this content and repackage it and redeliver it to all sorts of different platforms as new content. And I like to call these bundles. And we begin to rethink about how we're actually creating content. It's just raw media. It's just a video. It might be a YouTube video, but we're going to store it as a simple video or copy or as an image. And then we can start to build out these different transformation chains that will take our source content and convert it and manipulate it into whatever bundles we need to actually publish. And so we have this concept of a content pool, which is always getting in new content, but is also continually reusing that content and transforming it into new types of content, which are then stored into the content pool, which then can be repurposed by AI or real people like writers who approve what the AI does into new bundles. And so then you can see the content pool continues to grow with new media that we continue to create and also content that we are continually repurposing and converting into new content. And so if you think about this, your content process is really broken down into four major processes. We have a process that takes content and brings it into the system. This is your inputs. It could be written content, it could be video, it could be audio, and it could be an image. And then that content comes into our database. And this is where we can store every single piece of content that we create individually as a video, as a image, as a piece of text, as an audio file, even if originally they were produced together. That way, each of these individual pieces of content could be reused, moving into the third part of our system, which is production, which is going to be some number of different transformations that must apply some sort of process to transform the content into our end goal, whatever that might be. So for instance, if we have a video, if we want to create a blog, then we need to take that video and we need to transcribe it. Then we need to send it to ChatGPT to write the rough draft. Then we need to send it to a writer to proofread it, and then we're done. And now, of course, in this particular system, this new proofread blog becomes a new piece of content that is in our data store that could be transformed again by AI and ChatGPT or some other platform into an image carousel with several images that again might go to a graphic designer for approval, which can then be published. And then again, these carousel images could again be taken and turned into a video slideshow, which of course could be approved by a person or not, which could then go out to social media. And so again, if we take a look at our content system that has those four different parts, we have our inputs, we have our database, we have our production, and then finally we have our distribution. So whatever we're creating will come into our database where we're storing everything individually, and then our production system is able to take any of these individual pieces of content, it can transform it into something new, which is going to continually add to the database, which of course can be transformed into something new again, which is going to multiply that source content that we have coming into the system, which can then be distributed out to social media or really any channel where your customers might exist. They could even be on a Slack channel, they could be in communities, they could be in your networking group. And that's really what this diagram here is helping illustrate. All right, so enough theory, let's get into building this out. But if you'd like access to the Make.com blueprint so that you can just simply import the blueprint and open up the automations just like this and get access to the Airtable base so you don't have to build it out, make sure to jump into the No Code Architects. It's a growing online community. And inside the classroom, there's a make.com workshop, and you can get access to a bunch of different templates like today's video, as well as tech support for your questions. All right, so let's go ahead and build this out from scratch. I'm here in Make, so you want to make sure you have a make.com account. And I'm also going to be using Airtable, as I said before. I'm going to create a brand new database from scratch. Every new database looks like this. You'll have to close a few windows. I'm going to rename my base here to Project 10x. Then I'm going to rename this table here to content. And then I'm going to delete these 3 columns here just to start from scratch. And as I build this out, I haven't really planned this completely from beginning to end. So I really want to show you how I think about things and the decisions I make. And I might make a few mistakes and we might build a few things and then change them. But that will just show you how to do this yourself, beyond just copying me and having an exact template to pull from. All right, and so before I can actually build out the input part of our system, we need to have the database to actually put something in. So I'm going to start with the database. I'm going to think that through as best as I can, and then we can add to it as we go. So for content, I usually like to make this first column, which is the primary key of our database, a ID field. So I'm going to go ahead and change this to ID, and then I'm going to grab an auto number field just like that. And then I start to think, well, what does content typically need? Well, it definitely needs like copy or a caption, right? So if we create a YouTube video, there's going to be a description. If we create a LinkedIn post, there's going to be copy where we can put the text that they can publish for us. If it's a blog, it's going to need text. So I'm going to come in here and just create the copy field. So the word copy will just be a generic name for the text of any given piece of content. And then I'll use the long text field, and then don't turn on rich text formatting. This can cause problems down the line with automations and your posting. Now, in terms of written material, there is often a title as well. So I'm going to go ahead and add a title. We'll just do a single line text, create field, and then content often has an image. So I'm going to come and add an attachment field, and we'll name this images. Create field, and then content also often has videos associated with it. So I'm going to create another attachment. I'll call it videos, create field. All right, so that's enough to get started. Make sure you're following along as we go. That's going to be how you learn best. And I think this is enough to get started. We're going to definitely add more to this as we go. But now that we have a database, now we can start to put some sort of content into it. And I think what we'll do is start with something really simple like a form. So again, if we think about our system, now we are working on the input side of our content system. And I'm going to come down here to the form. Now, this is a new feature that Airtable has released in terms of their interfaces. They're always trying to get you to go down and use their new interface. I'm going to go ahead and use their standard form to get started. I'm going to call this the new idea form. We'll create that view. So this is going to pop up here, and this is really a form builder. This isn't the actual view here. We can't actually fill out this form and submit it. To access that form, we can actually click this here. And from here, we would be able to actually submit this into our system. Now, if this is a new idea form, I'm not sure putting in the copy or the title or images or videos makes sense. It might make sense, but if it's just an idea, I might want to have a dedicated field just for the idea. So I'm going to come back to our database, and I'm going to add one more field called idea, and I'm going to just make that a single line text, and then I'll just move this to the front of the table, and then I'm going to come back to my form here, and now that new field is here over in the hidden area. And so if I want to adjust things, I can actually take these other fields here, the images and the videos, which I might not want on just a simple idea form, and then I'm going to grab the idea column here and put it right here. And then I'm going to go ahead and make it required. And then I'm going to look at some of these other choices here. Because I'm submitting ideas, I might have more than one. I'm going to go ahead and click this button here, which is going to allow me to submit another response. And then I'll have that form automatically go to a blank form after 5 seconds as well. And so now if I go to this open form, it's going to be just the idea, Zapier versus make.com. Submit. Now, if I come back to Airtable and I jump over to the data view, we're going to see that new idea right here. Now, again, remember when we're thinking about this input section of our content process, we are going to accept any type of content that we might be able to think of. So in this case, we have a new idea, but I'm also going to add another form here. Again, I'm not going to pick this here. I'm just going to keep using their old standard forms. We're going to call this our community post. create view. Now this time it's not an idea. I'm going to create this form to actually input some of the posts that I make into my community so I can repurpose them. I'll take out the videos and the images. I'm going to put the title at the top, and then I'm going to come down here again and say show a submit another response button and show a new blank form after 5 seconds. And now I'm going to open up this form, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go over to my community. I just happened to make this post last night. I'm going to grab the title. I'm going to go ahead and put that here. Then I'm going to go ahead and grab the contents, and then I'm going to drop that here in the copy section, and then I'm going to go ahead and click submit. And then if I come back to my content database and I go to the grid view, now we are going to have 2 pieces of content. One's just an idea, and then the next one is a community post that I made the night before. Now again, when you get more advanced, when you start to develop your input systems, you could definitely automate that piece that I just showed you there, where we have the community posts that are more impromptu. You could automate that and bring that into your database automatically. But right now I'm just trying to show you how we want to capture every idea or piece of content separately in its own database that we can then process however we need to for that type of content down the line. And now that I have 2 different ideas in here, we might also want to create a column here, which is a single select field called source type. And we might want to just track how did it come into the system. And now I'll show you an automated way to get content into the system, and we'll do something with audio notes. I'm going to go ahead and create this field here. And now I'm going to jump over to make and do our first automation here. I am going to connect up with Slack, and I'm going to watch a private channel for an audio note that I could record into Slack, just into the Slack app on my phone while I'm walking around during the day on a walk. If you don't have Slack connected, you'll want to create a connection. You can do that by clicking add and connecting it to your Slack account. For the input method, I'm going to go ahead and put select a list, and then I'm going to select that private channel. I created a channel on my Slack account called Speak to Social, and you can go ahead and leave the limit at 2. Now there's not much to this channel. I'm the only one that has access to it. And you can see here that I have 2 voice notes that I recorded that are just sitting in this private channel Speak to Social. And now if I right click on this trigger, it's going to give me several different options here. I can run the module, I can choose where to start, and that's where we're going to start here. We're going to choose manually, and that's going to give us all of the messages that have been added into that private channel, where I'm the only member of that channel so that other people don't see my voice notes. But it's going to bring up the 3 messages that I've added to that channel. So I can go ahead and select one, and then if I go ahead and say run this module only, it's going to run that module. And if I open this up and we take a look at the files here, we're going to see that we have an audio clip here, and we also have the download URL. So now I'm going to go ahead and add another module, a Slack module. This time we're going to search for download a file. And we need to use a Slack module to do this because it is a private file and it needs to have a connection in order to get access to it. I'm going to go ahead and add my Slack connection. It's telling me that I need to expand the permissions. When I created the connection here, it didn't have the ability to download the file. So it's asking me to extend those permissions. It's going to go ahead and create this OAuth window where I can give it the proper permissions. I'll go ahead and allow. And now it's going to ask me what file do I want to download, and I should be able to use the file URL from here. And if I just go in here into files, we're going to see URL private file download. And then I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And now I'm going to come back here. I'm going to go ahead and say choose where to start. Unfortunately, you have to do this each time you do a test. So I'm going to choose manually. I'm going to pick that audio message, and then I'm going to run this automation. Downloaded the file. Let's take a look at it. There we go. There's that output data. Now, the next thing we need to do is we need to convert that audio into a transcript so that we can save that transcript into our system here. And I'm going to go ahead and copy the transcript directly into the copy. You could make an argument for creating an additional field for that, but I'm going to go ahead and use the copy field for all transcriptions. So next up, in order to convert that audio into text, I'm going to go ahead and use ChatGPT Whisper. I'm going to go to the OpenAI module, scroll down to create a transcription. Make sure not to create a translation. Create transcription. If you don't already have a connection, you'll need to add that now. It's going to allow us to map that file directly here in this module using this download. Go ahead and pick the model. I'm going to go ahead and leave the prompt blank. Then I'm going to go ahead and click OK. I'm just going to go ahead and assume this module is going to work correctly. We'll see. Now, one thing to keep in mind when you are converting audio into a transcription, ChatGPT Whisper can only manage files up to 25 megabytes. So I'm going to take a quick look here and see if I can see how big this file is. It looks like it's about 3 megabytes. So it should be fine. If by chance it was a really large audio note, you would need to do a conversion here to make it an MP3 before you try to convert it to bring the size down. Again, I'm going to assume that this is going to be successful. I'm going to go ahead and try to add this to our new Airtable base that we've been building. I'm going to create a new record. In this case, it's a brand new Airtable database, so I don't have a connection to it. So I'm going to add a new base. Always pick OAuth for your Airtable base. I'm going to rename the connection to the 10x project. Save. It's going to bring up the OAuth window. I'm going to add a base. I'm going to type project 10x. There it pops up. Going to grab that. Grant access. Then I'm going to go ahead and select the base, project 10x. Then we'll pick our table, the content table. Then all we need to do is take the result of our ChatGPT whisper call and drop that into the copy. We'll have that text right here. And that's all we need to do for now. We could pick the source type right now. I'm going to go ahead and uncheck this map, and then I'll have the drop down, and I could just put audio notes, and then I could go ahead and click OK. Now I'll go ahead and click save. Now again, if I just hit run once right now, nothing's going to happen. And that is because there are no new audio notes since the last time I ran it. So again, you're going to have to come in here. You're going to do a choose where to start, choose manually. And then from here, I'm going to grab that previous audio note, and then I'm going to run the automation. It downloaded the file. Now it's doing the transcription, and now it wrote that new record over into Airtable, and there it is. So here is that transcription that I made before. It was a quick voice note on the biggest mistake people make with AI. And now you can see what I'm doing here is that now I have this growing database of different types of content from different sources. This one's just an idea, so I'll go ahead and mark that. We didn't have that source type when we created it. This source type is a community post. And so you can see what we've been focused on is this input side of things, getting things into our database so that then we can decide, okay, now that we have all of these different types of content into the system, are we just going to post it as is, or do we need to edit it, or do we need to transform it from one thing to another before we are done? We can also focus on this input side, and we can also think about, okay, how are we actually going to get that content into the system? Is it going to be from somebody submitting a form? Is it going to be some sort of automation that goes to my community and pulls that community post directly into the system? Or do I input that as a form as well? I will say that everyone wants to automate everything, but having a form to get stuff into the system to get running is definitely not a bad thing. The more content you have into your system, and the more you're able to drive that content actually out to your destination channels, whether that's LinkedIn or TikTok or YouTube. This is the priority. It's not always as fun, but forms get things going. And believe it or not, automation can slow you down like the little turtle. So let's create a couple other ways to get content in here. I'm gonna go ahead and create another form. We're gonna call this one new video. I'm gonna create that view. In this case, I'm gonna go ahead and take out the idea field. I'll take out the copy field. I'm gonna leave the title. I'm gonna take away the images. I'll go ahead and leave the source type. I'll show you this is kind of cool. Actually, before I do this, I've got to add in that new type. So I'm gonna jump back to our grid view, and I'm gonna add another source type. We'll call this one YouTube video. And then I'm going to add another one just called video upload, and I'll show you how to do this one in just a second. We'll automate a video upload to a Google Drive folder to bring it into the system. In this case here, we're just going to use the YouTube video and just upload it in through a form. And I'll go ahead and click save. And let's go back to our new video. And here in the source type, you can actually hard code this to YouTube video. You can make it required. Actually, what I need to do here is limit selection to a specific type. You don't actually do it here. If I open my form, I can put in the title, how to generate faceless videos, and then I can actually attach a video. I've got some sample videos here. I can just take a YouTube video, upload it. That's going to upload it to the form into Airtable. There's that video. I can select the source type, and notice that it's only giving me one option here, and then I can submit that. And then if we come back to our database here, we now have another piece of content, which is a video, and that video is right here. We have the source type and we have the title. So that's another way to get content into your system. And now let's come back to make. I'm going to go ahead and save this audio notes to Airtable. I'll save it down here. I'll leave that. Then I'll create a new automation. This time I'm going to go with Google Drive, and we'll pick Google Drive here. And then we're going to use this trigger here, watch files in a folder. And so I'm going to go ahead and add a new connection. Then I'm going to pick the correct Gmail account to use. I'll go ahead and allow. While it's creating the connection there, I'm going to go ahead and create a trigger folder so that any new video that I upload into this folder will trigger this automation, and then we can bring it it into the system. So I'll come back to my automation here, and it's asking me which folder I want to use. You can actually do a select here and select the folder. Notice it's right here, video upload. Then you can select which file types to watch. In this case, I'm going to leave it on all, and then you can leave the limit alone here. Now this should look familiar as well. While we're testing, we have to upload a file and then choose one manually. So I'm going to go here to the video upload. I'm going to upload the same video that I did to the form. That video is now there. Now I'm going to come back to our make integration. I'm going to go ahead and choose manually. It's going to give us the ability to select that video. And now if I run this once, or I just run this single module, we'll see that it was able to come up with that video. Now, in order to get this video into Airtable, I need to make this video publicly accessible so that Airtable is able to read it and put it into the system. So next up, I'm just going to come here. I'm going to go back to Google Drive. I'm going to come down to get a share link. You have to pick your connection. Again, I'm going to have to update the permissions of this connection that I just created. Pick the same account. And now we are going to change the permissions of a file. The file ID is going to be the file ID from the step one. Going to come here to the file ID. The role is going to be reader, and the type needs to be anyone, and everything else looks good. So we can go ahead and click OK. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a create row in Airtable. We're going to create a record. Make sure you pick the right connection. I'm going to go ahead and use the 10x project. The base is going to be project 10x. The table will be content. And so now what we need to do is we need to add a video item here. And for the file URL, we can go ahead and use the web content link. We can leave the file name blank, but we are going to update the title, and we can go ahead and use the name from the first step. I'm going to use the name here. So I'm just going to grab that value right there. I'll go ahead and click OK. We'll go ahead and click save. Now, in order to run this once again and run the entire automation, I do need to choose where to start, choose manually. Then I could select that video. Then if I go ahead and click run once, now if I come over to our Airtable database, we should have a new row here, which is the YouTube video edited.mp4, which is the one that I uploaded right here. And now we have that video here in the videos. Now what I probably should have done as well is updated that source type. Remember to video upload. So I'm going to come back to the automation and change the map to off, and then I will click source type, video upload, OK, save. And then of course, if I were to turn this on, then the next time that I actually upload a video here, it would upload automatically. I wouldn't have to come here and choose where to start and choose manually like I'm doing now. I'm going to go ahead and run it once just for testing, just to see that I've fixed the issue with the source type. So now that's fixed. But again, now if I were to upload a file, let's just go ahead and do that. We'll do this one instead. That's going to upload. Now, in order to speed this automation up, I am going to go ahead and just run this once. Otherwise, I would have to wait for this interval here before it was uploaded. It's going to find that new file. It's going to give it the share link, and it's going to upload it to Airtable. And there's that new video, and I could watch it right here from Airtable. So this is a really good overview of the first couple parts of our system, which is the input and the database. And it really comes down to thinking about, okay, what are those different source pieces of content? Are they a video? Are they an image? Are they a community post? Is it a voice note? And not only that, but what is the mechanism that gets them into the database itself? Is it a form that you just manually fill out and upload? Is it an automation? So now we're starting to understand and abstract a bit about how to manage this system, get stuff in, what type of content is it, and we're creating the database to actually store it all. And we're starting to think through, okay, how are we actually going to get that content into the system itself? All right, cool. So now we have demonstrated the input and the database side of our content system in order to just multiply our content and reuse it and repurpose it. Now we need to start talking about production. And obviously when it comes to production, any one of these things could be done manually, right? We could take our database, we could take text, we could take video, images, and somebody could produce something manually and then put it back into the system. And I think that's always an important part of your process, whether it's review or, adding on or whatever that might be. That's an important part. In this video, we are going to focus on the automated part. So let's just keep pushing this forward a bit and be patient as we kind of build this out, because we're going to do some really cool stuff here. This is going to get Super cool. And once we build this out, you're going to feel really empowered to repurpose your content in as many different ways as you could imagine. So first, let's just start with some basic examples here. So we've got this video. So in other cases, we have copy already, which is great. We could use that in a number of different ways, right? We could maybe take this copy and create a carousel or whatever. With repurposing video with automation, typically the first thing that we're going to need to do is to convert it to text so that then we can do something with. And then once we have some text, we'll create some other automations that convert the text into carousels or video carousels or some Twitter posts. And we'll just do that in just a few minutes. But first, we need to convert that video into text. So the next thing I'm going to do here, let's make this a little bit smaller. And over here on the views here, I'm going to rename this to content. And then I'm just going to adjust these columns a little bit. At some point, we might need to create new views or hide some fields or shrink things a bit, just so we can fit it all on the screen. I'm going to go ahead and delete some of these rows that were here originally. And now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add a new column. I'm going to go ahead here and say link to another record, and I'm going to create a new table. And I'm going to call this table transformation actions. And then we have to name the table, and I'm going to name it the same thing. And right here for allow linking to multiple records, I'm going to turn that off. There are some advanced ways that we could use that later, but to keep things simple for now, I'm going to go ahead and just create it just like that. So we have this new field here, which allows us to add transformation actions. And if you jump over here, we're going to see we have that new table here. So we have a name, and then we also have a reverse lookup field, which is going to show us for each one of these rows that we create, which piece of content is it connected to. So I'm going to go ahead and rename this column to action name. We'll leave it as a single line text. And then I'm going to go ahead and hide this. We don't really need to see that. Hide. And now I'm going to go ahead and add an ID here, and you'll see why in just a little bit. And again, I'm going to use an auto number, and I'm going to say ID. I'm going to say create field. And then I'm going to go ahead here and I'm going to type webhook URL. And you'll see why I do that in just a second as well. This is going to be super cool when you see how this works. Create field. And then what we're going to do here is we are going to name this action name media to transcription. And then I'm going to go ahead and adjust the columns a little bit. So now what we're going to be able to do is we're basically creating a bunch of different actions that we can apply to our content that will run an automation by calling this webhook to do whatever this action is. So in this case, we're creating an automation to convert media to a transcription. So in this video, we might also create an action for text to blog, or text to carousel, or we might do carousel to video, or we might do text to 5x tweets. So now what we've done is we've created 5 different actions here that we can go to our content and we can say, all right, for this particular video, let's go ahead and perform this action, which is media to transcription. And what we want here is that when we add this, it's going to fire off a request to this remote webhook on make.com to perform that action. And then when it's done, to come back and update this row with the results. So in this case, media to transcription, it should download this media, create the transcription, and write it back to Airtable, and then remove this here so that we can then perform other actions on this content, or really any other content that we are working with. So let's go ahead and build this one out before we move on to any of the other actions, just to show you what this would look like. So first up, I'm going to come over to make.com and I'm going to create a new scenario. And in this case, I'm going to add a new webhook, custom webhook instant. I'm going to create that webhook. Going to go ahead and click save. And now that webhook URL is here, now we can call this. I'm going to go ahead and copy it to the clipboard, and then you have to make sure to click OK. And we're going to come down here and click save. And then I'm going to come back to our Airtable, and we are going to add that webhook right here. And now that we have that webhook, I'm going to come over to content, and I'm going to come over to the transformation actions, and I'm going to go to this little caret right here, and I'm going to say add lookup field. And I'm going to go ahead and bring all 3 of these into the content table. I'm not sure if I'll need them all or not. I'm going to add those 3 fields. And then what we're going to see here is that when we apply one of these different things, those lookup fields are auto-populating with the content that is related to whatever we select. So we can see that we have the action name that is from that table here, and we have the ID that is from that table here, and we have the webhook that is from that table here, which is related to the one we actually selected. Now we don't need to see these particular fields in the main view, so I'm going to go ahead and hide them. Just like that. And then I'm gonna go ahead and continue to build out the automations to actually trigger this remote webhook that we actually created. So to do that, I'm gonna come over here to actions and I'm gonna go ahead and create a new trigger. And I'm gonna use when record matches condition, and I'm gonna go ahead and select a table and I'm gonna click the content table. For the condition, I'm going to say when the transformation action is not empty. So what that's going to mean is that anytime I come here to the transformation actions and select one, well, that's going to say, well, this column is no longer empty. And so it's going to trigger this automation to run. And so if I choose a record here, we should see a few different options here. They all have video, which is good. I'm going to pick this row here, number 10, and then we have to actually do something when this is triggered. So I'm going to come to this step here. I'm going to run a script. Now for this script, I'm going to copy and paste this from another project. Last week I did a video on converting Midjourney images into videos with Luma Labs. So I'm going to come here and grab the script contents here. I'm going to edit the code. I'm going to grab this. I'm going to come back to our automation here. And before you try to copy this, let me go ahead and update everything that I need to update. And then you can just pause the video and copy everything. What we need to pass to this webhook is the record ID that is triggering it. So we want to know, is it this record or is it this record or is it this record? And we also want to know the transformation action. And we also want to know the webhook that is associated with this, because when we start to build out this automation, pretty quickly what we're going to do is we're going to create a route that will do different things depending on what transformation we're trying to do, right? So for the media to transcription, we're going to go down this path. For other automations, we're going to go down those different paths. So hang with me as we build this out. Going to come back here to the automation. So I'm going to need to add a couple variables here. We need the record ID, as I mentioned. Keep in mind that the case matters here, record, uppercase I, lowercase d. For the value, go ahead and click this button here and add the record ID. For the name here, I'm going to go ahead and put action ID. And for the value, and again, pay attention to the case, action, uppercase I, lowercase d. And for the value, I'm going to go ahead and click this blue button and make sure not to pick this ID here. I want to scroll down and grab the ID from the transformation actions. I'm going to go ahead and click in here and we're going to grab this value here. Now I'm just going to make a quick note. So in this transformation actions, we have the action name and then we have a unique ID. I could use the action name and pass the action name and then pass that into the script here to determine which path I go down. Now, the reason why I'm not using the name is because the name could change. What if I come back here and I change this name sometime? Well, it's going to be annoying because then I'm going to have to come back to the automation and change the automation. Which path was it? Blah, blah, blah. In this case, because I'm using the ID, I can change this however I want and the ID is not going to change. So I'll come back to the automation here, action ID, and then we've got the value. And now I'm going to grab the webhook URL, and then I'm going to go ahead and add the value. I'm going to click the blue button here. Let's go ahead and scroll down. Now we're looking for the webhook URL. It's not super obvious, but there's a little arrow there. You click on that and you're going to grab the value. And so now what we're doing here is we're passing in these three values from this record here. And if you remember, this record had these three values added because we added them from the lookup table up here. So back to the automation. Now the final thing we need to do is make sure that we're actually sending these two values and we're using this webhook. What this line does here is it gets these values right here and allows them to use this in the script. So right now we're saying we're basically calling a webhook. And so we're pulling in that webhook URL. That's this right here. And then we're patching in the record ID. And now we need to make a little tweak here because when I made this webhook call from the other application, we call that action. In this case, I'm going to call it action ID. And then we want to change this to action ID. So there we go. That should be good. I'm going to go ahead and finish editing. Then I'm going to come back and just edit again. It's good to finish. Sometimes you need to finish it before everything kind of syncs together. And now what I can do is I can come back to our automation here. I'm going to change the name real quick. I'm going to call this our transformation actions. I'm going to come down here and save everything. Then I'm going to go ahead and run once. Then I'm going to come back to Airtable in our automations. I'm going to test this. This is going to send the record ID, the action ID, and then it's going to use this webhook URL to get us a message into Make so that then we can actually build out our automations. So let's check it out, see if it works. Test. There it came through. We can open that up and now we can see here we have the record ID and the action ID. Perfect. So next, Every time this runs, we are going to need to look up that record ID, right? Because first thing we need to do is actually open up this record and get all of its data so that we can do something with it. So every time this is called, I'm going to go ahead and do that. So I'm going to add another module. We're going to add an Airtable module. We're going to get a record. We're going to choose the right connection. We're going to add the base. The base is project 10x. The table is content, and the record ID is going to come from step 1 here. Record ID, and we'll go ahead and click OK. And now the next thing we're going to need to do is actually do a route so that we can start to only execute on the route that was actually sent to us. So now I'm going to add another module. I'm going to go with flow control, and we're going to pick our router. And then for the first route, we are going to come to the condition here, and we are going to use this action ID, and we are going to say equals to 1, and we'll go ahead and click OK. Now we can start to build out the rest of this automation that is going to convert the media into a transcription. So like, what do we need to do next? So when we load this record here and we open this up, we have the videos. So we have the video URL here. So the only thing we should really have to do is use ChatGPT Whisper to convert that video into a transcription. Now, again, the only thing you do need to be careful about is that video larger than 25 megabytes? If you are processing larger videos, then you are definitely going to need another module like Cloud Convert to do that. In this case, my video is just 10 megabytes, so I'm not going to have an issue. So I'm going to go ahead forward with adding in ChatGPT, create a transcription. The connection, we'll use my existing connection. If you don't have one, you'll need to add one. So now in order to use ChatGPT Whisper, now that I'm seeing this, we actually have to download the file. So it will not allow us to just simply pass in a URL like this. We actually have to download the file and map it in. So in order to do that, we're going to come right here. Let's expose this a bit more. And then we're going to add a module right here, add module. And then we're going to type in HTTP. We're going to get a file, and we're going to grab that URL from Airtable. We're going to jump over to the videos. We're going to expand that, and we're going to grab that URL. Then we're going to click OK. And now what's going to happen is we're going to have the data here. So if I come back to Whisper, now it's asking for that file. We can just put it right here, and we don't need to add a prompt. We can go ahead and click OK. Similar to what we did with the voice notes, we're going to simply update Airtable. Here, we're going to update a record. It's going to use the existing connection. We're going to add the base. Then we're going to add the table, content, and then we are going to update the copy with the result from ChatGPT Whisper, which is the text. I'm also going to do something else here, which is I'm going to try to update the transformation actions and remove the field here so that after it runs, it clears this out so that we can apply the next transformation action. I might have to experiment on this a little bit, but I believe if I open this up and I add a null value, so I'm going to select in here, and then I'm going to come up to these controls here, and I'm going to add a null value. I believe that will send it back to just empty. We'll see how that works. Gonna go ahead and click OK. Actually, I didn't put in the record ID, so I gotta add that. That's coming from the original step. Gonna go back to the controls here, come to the record ID, and then we'll click OK. We'll go ahead and click save. I'm gonna use this little magic button here. It's gonna realign everything for me. I'm gonna run once. I'm gonna come up to our test. I'm gonna go ahead and test, jump back to make to see this run. Downloaded the file, looks like we had an issue here. So it's not recognizing the file type. I'm gonna come in and do a map instead of get a file so that I can actually pass a file name, and then I'm gonna put a .mp4. Let's see how that works. Sometimes you have to troubleshoot some of this stuff. Go ahead and click OK. I'm gonna go ahead and save that. And then I'm gonna go ahead and click run once, gonna jump back to Airtable, and then we're gonna trigger this again. Nothing's ever easy, but that's the kind of stuff you have to be able to navigate. So we downloaded the file, now it worked. Now we got another one. So it doesn't like that null value there. Okay, so I'm gonna come back. So instead of doing this, I'm gonna remove that. I'm gonna click the map here. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna pass an empty array. What that means is I have an empty array here, which is an open bracket and a closed bracket, which should clear that out. That's another way to handle this. I'm gonna go ahead and give that a try. Go ahead and click OK. Go ahead and click save. And now if I come back to the data here, we should not see the copy because that errored out. So let's come back to make. I'm gonna go ahead and run once. I'm gonna come back to the trigger. I'm going to trigger that again, and let's cross our fingers. Transcription, still having an error with that. It's not a valid record ID. I'm going to try one more thing here before I just do something different altogether. I'm going to come in here and just add a null value, put null in that array so that there's some value in there. I'm going to go ahead and click OK. If that doesn't work, I'll show you something else. I'm going to go ahead and save it. I'm going to run once, then I will come back to Airtable and we'll trigger that again, do the transcription. Another error. Just doesn't like how we're doing that. So instead of doing it that way, I'm gonna go ahead and come in here and I'm going to remove this here. Just leave that blank and turn this back off the map so that we're not really messing with this at all. I'm gonna go ahead and click OK. And I'm gonna go ahead and click save. And then what I'm gonna do, first, I'm just gonna run this and see if it's working, the transcription part of it. Come back to Airtable and we'll test it. We'll get the transcription. This time it should update no problem. If I come back to the data, now we have that transcription. So now I'm gonna handle this a different way. I'm gonna come up to our automation. This is working. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna update that here. I'm gonna update the record and go to the table and then go to the record ID, which is gonna be this one here, record ID. And then I'm gonna go ahead and choose the field. In this case, it's gonna be transformation actions, and we're just going to leave it blank. And then that should solve our issue. I just click this here and I'm going to run a test, because what I really want to see is this to disappear. And I'll tell you why. If I run this, okay, now it disappeared. Once I turn this automation on now, and we're going to call this the trigger transformation action. And once I turn this on, and then I turn on this automation here, you can see what's gonna happen. I'm gonna come back out of this automation. I'm in the edit mode. I'm gonna step back to just view mode where I can see things that are actually running. And then what you're gonna see here is if I come back here and I say media, let's remove this, media to transcription, this is gonna trigger. See, it's going right now. That means if I jump over to make, it's happening, right? It's gonna run, it's gonna update, and then remove that. Now I can call the next thing. So now I can say, okay, now let's turn this text into a blog. All right, so let's just keep moving forward here. Now I'm going to move on and let's just keep building out the rest of these transformations. And so next up, now that we have the copy here that we converted from the video or the copy that we have here, then we can go ahead and just build out the next automation. So let's move on to text to blog. So this is gonna be pretty simple. Now all of these transformations here are gonna be calling the same webhook, at least in my example here. As we build these out, I'm just gonna keep calling the same webhook and just go down a different router. So in our table here, I'm just gonna do a fill down. If you're not familiar, it's just like a spreadsheet. I can just fill it down just like that. Now, obviously we could point these different transformation actions to a different webhook. That would be our prerogative. That would just mean that we were having multiple automations on the back end to do this. In this case, I feel like it's just easier to go ahead and do it this way. So now I'm gonna go ahead and add the next filter. We're gonna look at the action ID, and I believe this one is 2. So I'm gonna just add that in there. I'm gonna go ahead and click OK. I'm going to go ahead and click save. All that we really need to do is tell ChatGPT to write a blog from this transcript here. So I'm going to come back to our automation and I'm going to do a ChatGPT module, and we are going to create a completion. You'll want to select your connection. You'll want to select your model. I'll go ahead and use GPT-4o, and then I'll go ahead and select the message. In this case, I'll just pick the user. And for the message, the prompt will just be write a blog from the text below. And then for the text, we're going to send the copy, and then we'll go ahead and click OK. It looks like we got to add the max tokens, and we'll just put 0. And then we'll go ahead and click OK. Now, obviously the prompt could be much better engineered. I'm really more focused on showing you the system and how this works versus perfecting the actual prompt. You'll want to spend some time on all of these different prompts, thinking about the input to provide the best output when we actually run these automations. And then next up, I'm going to just go ahead and clone this and then drop it right here. And then we'll have to fix whatever error that is, which is going to be, it's using this value here. So we just got to take this and use the result from here, which is right there. And then we can go ahead and click OK. And then we can click save here. And so now what this is going to do is it's going to take the actual transcript. It's going to use that and update it in ChatGPT into a blog, and then it's going to reuse this here. So now this might be an example where maybe when it's a transcript, you want to have a different field so that the transcript doesn't get overwritten by the blog. Those are some engineering choices that you could make. Or you could duplicate this row. You could just duplicate the content so that you had the original transcript here. And then you could just run the transformation on this here so that you always had the original transcript. I'll go ahead and move forward like this so we have that original transcript. I'm going to come back to our automation. I'm going to go ahead and do a run once. Then I'll come back to our automation here. I'm going to go ahead and turn this off now so that it doesn't run completely automatically. And I'm going to go ahead and select a new transformation, this time text to blog. I'm going to come back to our trigger. I'm going to choose a new record. I'm going to choose record 11. And then I'm going to go ahead here and I'm going to scroll down and test this action. Jump over to make very quickly. We've got that webhook coming through. Now notice it went down this path instead. Now it's writing the blog from the transcript, and then it's going to update Airtable. And now we have got the actual blog that is written from the transcript. And now notice it's leaving the transformation action, and that's just simply because it didn't execute this final update here, because we're just working it out. All right, so now we have our next transformation done. All right, so let's keep moving forward with text to carousel. So I'm going to jump over to our make automation, and I'm going to add that new route. Going to go ahead and use the magic align here. Going to add the filter so that we're only acting on action ID being number 3. So action ID is the condition, and then we'll say equals to 3. Let's just double check that's the right? Yep, 3. So we've got that. Now let's go ahead and click OK. So now the first thing we need to do is we need to convert the text of whatever record we're on into a carousel. And now for the carousel images, I'm going to use a platform called Placid. And each image is just going to be like a tweet, pic, displays one line at a time. And we'll just have multiple images with 5 or 6 different one-liners like this. So let's jump back to the automation. And now I'm going to do a ChatGPT completion, create a completion, go ahead and pick the right connection. We'll go ahead and use the 4.0 model. I'm going to add a message. We'll go ahead and use the user message, and we'll use message content. I'm going to paste this in from a previous prompt, and I'm going to say read the text below, and then I'm just going to copy in the copy text. And then in this case, I'm going to go ahead and show advanced settings. I'll go ahead and pick max tokens now. And for the output, I'm going to go ahead and use a JSON object. It's going to make it a little bit easier to parse and iterate over. That should be good. I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And now let's go ahead and save this. And I'm going to do a run once. Going to jump back to our content table here. I'm going to remove this text to blog. I'm going to go ahead and this time I'm going to say text to carousel. And I'm going to jump back to our automation here. I'm going to reselect the trigger. Each time you change anything about a row, you always have to reselect the trigger. When you select this trigger, it saves the data of that row at the time you chose the trigger. So if you change the data, you need to come back and change the record. So we're going to go back to record 11. I'm going to come back here so I can trigger the automation. We'll go ahead and test the action. That should come through, and it should come down this path this time. And let's see what the error is. So it looks like in order to use the output JSON, we need to actually tell it to do so. Now I'm actually going to have a change of heart on using the JSON output. And there's some reasons behind that, but it's going to make the processing of this data a little bit more difficult unless we spend a little bit more time and care on this prompt. And we really don't need to do that in this case. So I'm going to go ahead and change the response format back to text, and then I'm going to go ahead and click OK, and I'm going to click save, and then I'm going to run once, and then I'm going to jump back to Airtable in our automation, and I'm going to test that trigger again, go down this path, and then I'm going to look at the result, and now we have that result as 5 different lines instead of trying to put that into a JSON. And again, the reason why I'm doing that is just this plain text is going to be a little bit easier to process in this specific example than trying to put into a JSON object and then parsing that and then trying to loop over it with an array. And if you're not familiar with JSONs, then don't really worry about it. Just follow me from here. We're going to go ahead and continue processing this text as it is here. So the next module that we need to add is the iterator. You can find this in your flow control. It's also here as well. I'll go into flow control and we'll see this iterator right here. And then for the array, we're going to actually have to build the array. So in this case, we have just text output from ChatGPT, but we need to break this into an array so that we can loop over each of these different values. So I'm going to come into this iterator and here into this array. And then I'm going to use the split command. If you type split and then open parentheses, it's going to convert into this function here. And now I can put in the result. And now we can go ahead and put a colon. And after the colon, we want to put in the character type that is going to split our string into an array. In this case, we're going to use a new line, which means that it's going to break up each line into an element of that array. And you'll see how that works. So we'll come up here to the A here, and we're going to look for a new line. And then we can go ahead and close the parentheses, and then we'll go ahead and click OK. Now we'll come back and save that once more. It's going to give you a warning that this shouldn't be the last module in the automation. That's okay. Go ahead and click save. Go ahead and click run once. It's going to give you a warning once again. Run anyway. We'll jump back to Airtable and we'll trigger the automation. I'm going to come down this path, go through ChatGPT, and then it's going to split that string up into an array. So when we open this up, we should now see individual bundles with just one line for each different bundle. So that looks good. So next up, anything after this module here is going to be in a loop until we close that loop. So I'm going to go ahead and create the next module. This time we're going to use the platform Placid. In this case, we're going to use create image. Now I already have a connection open. Each connection is actually connected to a specific project. So you'll notice here that I have multiple projects going. One of them is called social graphics. So if you were back at your dashboard and then you clicked on projects and then you added a new project, you would want to go ahead and click API. You'd want to give it a name. You can call it social graphics. I'll call mine 2 so it's not the same one. Then you can go ahead and create an API. And then from here, you're going to want to create a template. You can go ahead and click this basic template here. This is going to create a template that has some sample text like this and this. And you can see all of the different layers here on the right side. All of the layers that you can change are indicated here with this little circle here. If I turn this off, I will not be able to modify this text from Make. If I turn it on, then I will. If I were to save this template just like that and then exit back out, I could then come here and grab my API tokens. This is your private token that you can copy into your Make automation. I'll come back to Make. I'm going to go ahead and add a new connection. I'm going to drop in that token right here. We'll go ahead and click save. It's going to load up all of my templates. Here is the template that I just added, the meshy quote. You'll see in the Social Graphics 2 project, which I just created, we have the meshy quotes. And then for the text, we can come in here and add in the value from our iterator, which is each line of the text created from ChatGPT. We'll go ahead and add that value. And then for the author, if this is just for you, you could just hard code this into the template like I did. Right here we have Rumi. I'll go ahead and add in Stephen G. Pope. Then I'll go ahead and click OK. Now this is going to loop through and create as many images as we have lines that came out of this ChatGPT prompt. And now I'm going to go ahead and close the iterator right here. Source module, you'll want to use this iterator right here, 13. And now what we want to do is update Airtable with all of the images that we create from Placid. And so we want to construct an array that we can give to Airtable, but because we do not have that Airtable module yet, I'm going to go ahead and click OK and add our update a record Airtable module. Airtable, update a record. Again, for the base, I'm going to go ahead and pick project 10x. And for the table, I will pick content. And now what we're going to do is we're going to take all of these images and we're going to add them to Airtable in this images field here. We're going to go ahead and turn on the map and then we're going to go ahead and click OK. Forgot to add the record ID. I'm going to add that record ID now. That's coming from this record ID from the very beginning. I'll go ahead and click OK. And now that we've added this module, we can come back to this array aggregator, go ahead and use this target structure type, and then we can reference the module in the next step and use the record images. And then we can pipe in the images from this Placid module, and then we can pass it the image URL, and we can go ahead and click OK. And what that's going to do is that this is going to loop through. It's going to grab all of those image URLs. It's going to package them up into an array, and then we can come and drop that array into this images field here, and we can just drop this array just like that. And now we can click OK, and now we can run once, and we can come back to Airtable, and we can trigger the test action, come back to Make. It's going to come down this path. It's going to create all of the different captions for each image. It's going to create all of the different images. Once all of the images are done, it's going to create that array of images and then drop that back into Airtable. Now it's done, and now it updated Airtable. So now if we come back to Airtable, we're going to see those individual quotes come into our system here. So again, it replaced my name here and then each of the different slides. So we have slide 1. You can use these arrows to control each slide. Now we got slide number 2, slide number 3, slide number 4, slide number 5. And then if I wanted to, I could come back to Make and actually pick the quotes that I normally use. So you'll have to come back to Placid and build this out yourself. But I'm going to come back to my social media graphics. I'm going to grab my Twitter carousel image, which only has room for the quote. Again, I'm going to move it back to the value here and click OK. Just to show you, I'll head back to the correct project, jump to projects, social media graphics. This is the original one I created. And here I'm using this template here, which really only has one field that I can replace. I hard coded my name, so it's not going to change each time. Then I can save the automation, run once. I'll come back here and delete all these images, trigger the process one more time. It's going to make all of those images from all the captions created from ChatGPT. Then it's going to bundle all those up and update Airtable. And then if we jump back here, we're going to see the quote cards that I created for myself that look just like that. And then finally, if I were to come and execute this final automation, run as configured, run test, and jump back here, it's going to clear that out. All right, so now let's go ahead and finish out the video by creating this last transformation here, text to 5 tweets. I'm going to go ahead and skip this one here because it's pretty complex. I challenge you to do that on your own. And by the way, if you're enjoying this video, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. It tells me what type of content you want more of. So if you do want to build out this automation on your own, you're going to be using the Placid module that actually creates a video. It looks something like this, create a video. I'll go ahead and put it here just so we can see inside of it just for a second. Here you'll need to create a different project, a different template, and then you're able to merge multiple clips together. Since it's similar to the way we've built out this one, I'm gonna skip that for now and move on to the text to 5 tweets. And this one's a bit different because in this case, we are going to take some text that we have from the copy of a previous piece of content. And then from that text, we are going to create an additional 5 different rows from that original content. So in all of these other examples that we've already done, we simply updated that same row with new information, whether it was a transcription or a blog or adding in images. In this case, we're actually going to take that text and generate 5 new rows. So let's do it. Jump over to the transformation actions. This is ID number 5. So I'm going to come over here to our automation. I'll go ahead and add a route for the carousel to video just as a placeholder, and we'll put equals 4, and I'll go ahead and save that. And then we'll add 1 extra route, and we'll update this filter here so that it is looking for action ID number 5. We'll go ahead and click OK. We'll go ahead and auto align everything. And now the first thing that we're going to do in this module is we're going to use a ChatGPT completion. So we'll go to OpenAI, create a completion. For the model, we'll use GPT-4o. And for the message, we'll go ahead and use the user role. And I'm just going to copy what we had over here and bring it into this new module, read the text below and generate 5 tweets that are 15 words or less. And then again, for max tokens, we'll go ahead and pick 0 and we'll go ahead and click OK. I'm going to go ahead and save it. I'm going to go ahead and run once. I'm going to jump back over to Airtable. In order to trigger off this new row, we'll need to come back to the data and we'll need to use the transformation actions. Scroll down, text to 5x tweets. Now, if I come back to the automation, we should be able to load a new record. I'm going to choose a record and I'm going to go ahead and just go with row 11, and then I'll skip to the run a script, scroll down, and I'll test the action. That should come in and take us down this final path here. It's going to run that through ChatGPT. Let's go ahead and take a look at the output. So here are the 5 different tweets. I'm just going to tweak the prompt to not include the number. So I'll just put include the tweet only without numbering each tweet. I'll go ahead and click OK. And I'm going to go ahead and continue to build this out. Now, looking at this here, it looks like it's going to be very similar to the automation here where we're iterating over the tweets, except we're not going to be creating an image. We're going to create a new row. So I'm going to show you a feature here with Make, which is pretty cool. If you hit Shift, it will allow you to select multiple modules. And I'm going to go ahead and copy those modules. And then I'm going to come down here and paste them. And then I can actually rearrange them. And then I can attach them just like that. And then if I come in here, I can just fix the broken values that are broken because they are from the results of this ChatGPT instead of this here. So then I'm just going to change this and use this result here. And again, we'll break it by the new line and I'll just go ahead and click OK. And instead of creating an image, I'm going to delete this and we will create a new row. I will add a new module, Airtable, create a record. In the base, we will use project 10x. For the table, we'll go ahead and use content. And instead of the idea, we're going to add this to the copy and it's just going to be the value of the iterator. This is going to break up all of the results, all of the tweets, and then we're going to add that here. We can leave the source type alone. We can go ahead and click OK. And then we'll have to fix the array aggregator. Actually, in this case, we don't really need to update the original record. So if we're running this transformation here on this record here, there's nothing we need to do to update this particular record. This is going to be removed by the main automation here in this step here. So we can actually remove this module. And if we don't have that module, we don't really need this array aggregator. This is only needed when you need to aggregate the data from the iterator. And in fact, if you try to save this as is, it will have an error. So I'm going to delete this as well. All we have to do is loop over the results from this module here and create those records. So I'll go ahead and just click save. I'll realign everything. And then I'm going to go ahead and run once. Going to jump back to our automation. Let's test that action. Let's see what happens over here. It's going to come down this path. It's going to generate the tweets. It's going to iterate. It's going to create those 5 tweets. If we come back to our data, Now we have those tweets here in our system. And so now what we have here is we have these 5 different transformations all doing something slightly different. And so we could save everything. And then finally we could turn on this trigger and then we can come back to the data. And then if we wanted to get a transcript for this automation here, we could just come up here and do media to transcript. That automation is going to run. I'm going to go ahead and back out. We should see that running over here. It's going to create that transcript. Let's see what the error was. So here we came across that max size. So to fix that, I'm going to add in a module here. It's called Cloud Convert. And I'm going to go ahead and show more. Convert a file, input file. I'm going to upload a file and we're going to use the file from our download here. Actually, in this case, because we were just downloading this in order to send it to Whisper, we could get rid of this module altogether at this point and simply use this same URL that we were using here directly into Cloud Convert. So instead of deleting this, I'm just going to show you that. So I'm going to import from a URL and I'm going to use the same one that we were using here. So I'm going to come down here to videos and use the URL. For the format, I'm going to go ahead and say I don't know the input format. That always seems to work best. Output format, I'm going to go ahead and use MP3. For file name, I'll just name it smaller audio file .mp3. I'll go ahead with download file so that we can use it in the next step in ChatGPT. I'll go ahead and click OK. I'm going to click save, come up here to ChatGPT. And now instead of using the file from this module here, I'm going to go ahead and use it from Cloud Convert. I'll go ahead and click OK. I'm going to click save. I'm going to run once. I'm going to go ahead and use existing data because it errored out. If I run this again, it's just going to pass the same file through. I'm going to go ahead and use Cloud Convert to convert it to an MP3, which is going to shrink it down for ChatGPT Whisper. Then ChatGPT can go ahead and convert that smaller file. Now it's much smaller than 25 megabytes. It's going to get that transcript and update Airtable. We can come back here. So now we've got that transcript. Now I could turn this transcript into a text to carousel. That's going to run in the background. I can come back to make, back out of the automation. We should see that running here. Actually, it's not running because it looks like we have a record in the queue because the automation had an error and it turned itself off. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it back on, process old data. Now we should see it coming through here. When you have errors, it will turn off the automation up here and it will queue them up so that you can run them again, just like it's doing now. While that's running, I'm going to jump back over to Airtable and I'm also going to go to this row and let's make text to 5 tweets. We'll run that automation at the same time. So now we've got another automation that's running as well. The carousel just finished. So if we come back here, now we've got the carousels and now it also just created the new 5 tweets. So what you have here now is the base of a content system that can keep track of every single piece of content. You can duplicate that content. You can then rebuild off of that and you can continue to create more and more content. We have all of these different ways to get content into the system. And then from the transformation actions, you can generate additional ways of transforming content, mapping it back to different automations on the back end, which go down their own unique path. And so it gives you an unlimited number of ways of creating additional content, duplicating content and building off of it and retransforming it, creating images, videos, etc. And if you like this video and you're interested in learning more about content automation, make sure to join my new community. It's growing fast and you can get access to a make course and a bunch of different automation templates just like the one you saw today, including this template here that allows you to generate faceless videos. And we also have this tech support channel that allows you to submit all of the issues that you're having with your automations and we'll help you solve them. Either way, I hope you found this video valuable. I'll see you in the next one.